If we follow Jung's map, the real Simba, not the carefree persona version, but the true king, isn't gone during Hakuna Matata. He's imprisoned in the unconscious. When the psyche fractures, when the original wholeness breaks and a part of you becomes too painful or too unacceptable to hold, that piece doesn't disappear. It becomes the Minotaur, the part of you that's been pushed into the unconscious because it holds everything the ego refuses to feel: fear, shame, guilt, unwanted truth, and the unrealized potential of your real destiny. The Minotaur is the powerful, wounded self you locked in the labyrinth that is your unconsciousness. And he is trying to find his way out. And here's the thing Jung warned us about. If you willingly go into the labyrinth and face the Minotaur on your own terms, you may be able to integrate him. But if you refuse, if you pretend he's not there and try to forget about him, one day he comes out on his terms. And when the shadow comes for you, it doesn't knock. It takes over. If The Lion King is the story about becoming who you really are, then Fight Club is the story about what happens when you pretend you're someone you're really not. Simba shows us individuation, the painful integration of the inherited tyrant shadow that destroyed his father. But Fight Club shows us something else, what Jung called Enantiodromia, when everything you've repressed comes roaring back as the shadow. Tyler Durden isn't just a cool character. He's the exact psychological figure that appears when your persona, your polite, polished, socially approved self, becomes so narrow that the rest of your psyche has no place to go. And when the persona becomes too tight, the shadow doesn't politely wait in line. It walks in, lights a cigarette, and says,
"I'm very, very pissed off."
When consciousness identifies too strongly with civility and restraint, the instinct doesn't vanish. It falls into the shadow. What returns is not an ideal or an image, but something much older, the primitive, the primordial, the animal soul. It is the part of the psyche that remembers what the ego has forgotten: hunger, rage, impulse. In myth and literature, this figure appears again and again. In Stevenson's tale, it is Mr. Hyde, the man stripped of every veneer of morality and culture. Hyde is the instinctive shadow made visible, the creature that emerges when one has denied one's own nature for too long.
Is Mr. Hyde!
The devil is the personification of the shadow. The shadow also has a moral dimension. It contains not only instinct, but all of the qualities that the ego condemns: envy, greed, lust, pride, and everything else considered evil. What is rejected inwardly,
everything the light touches. What about that shadowy place?
That's beyond our borders. You must never go there, Simba.
But I thought
is inevitably projected outwardly. And the devil appears in religion and myth as the embodiment of those very forces that dwell in man himself. The more one strives toward an image of moral perfection, the more powerful these opposites become. For every light creates a shadow, and the brighter the persona, the darker the shadow that balances it. For Jung, Lucifer's fall is not church history, but a psychological drama. Lucifer is the light bringer, the separated, rebellious intellect, and his exile is the symbol of how consciousness splits off everything dark from its idea of God. The brighter we make God, the more we are forced to throw all negation into the devil, who then becomes the personification of the shadow. The end. No, I'm just kidding. Well, for a lot of people, this is actually where their sort of self-realization, individuation journey really ends, actually, or stops. Because a lot of people these days grow so comfortable in their persona, in their taken identity, that they remain with it in some context for the rest of their life. Of course, this whole individuation thing, it's not a neatly packaged sort of chronological phase thing like Erikson's developmental stages. You cannot put numbers on these stages because individuation, as it is portrayed by Jung, it's sort of cyclical, but at the same time for your entire life. And obviously it's much better, much deeper. But in some areas, people just get stuck, or they grow accustomed to their persona, or they just let their shadow sort of come out every new full moon or something like that, and just go on living that way. Because actually delving into the labyrinth and facing the Minotaur, that is the first time that you have to take action and do something difficult. Up until this point, individuation has happened to you, and now you need to happen to it. And that brings us from persona, shadow, into the next phase, confrontation.